only built for Cuban links, he wanted to call it
Wu Gambinos.
But then a phone call came in from the actual Gambinos.
I remember him coming back to me and saying, yo, it's not happening. I'm like, what you talking about? What do you mean it can't happen? Gambino men, what? He was like, it's not gonna happen.
Gambinos. No crime family in America has been as powerful, as wealthy, or as treacherous. Founder, Carlo Gambino, had the intelligence of a fox, the strength of a lion, and the nose of a hawk.
This guy was calling the shots, and those shots ended in murder.
Hip-hop's got wild stories, but this one, it's on another level. Back in the day, the Wu-Tang Clan almost got into it with one of the most feared mafia families in U.S. history, the legendary Gambinos. This wasn't just some rap beef or label drama. The Gambinos were the real deal. Old school, straight up mafia royalty, and even the Wu had to pump the brakes once they realized who they were dealing with. So let's rewind to the mid-90s.
Our mentality was, we'll take the risk. But, you know, like I said, being young, and we had to second guess that motion and be like, you know what? Don't do it.
Wu-Tang was running the rap game, no question. Their rise, it was smooth and deadly, like smoke creeping out the shadows of Shaolin. Every move got people watching. Raekwon, one of the sharpest pens in the crew, was prepping his solo debut. From the jump, he had a vision. The name he wanted, Wu Gambinos. It hit hard. At that time, Wu-Tang was living in that gangster movie mindset. Think Scarface, Casino, Goodfellas, all mashed into one. Their sound was like a soundtrack to street legends and mob bosses, so Ray calling his album Wu Gambinos, that would have been the ultimate salute to that vibe.
Yes, when you were coming together doing the Cuban Links project, originally the project was supposed to be called Wu Gambinos.
But here's the twist. While the clan was building this cinematic underworld fantasy, the real Gambinos weren't a thing of the past. Nah, they were still alive, active, and dangerous in NYC streets and using their name. That wasn't just edgy. It could have gotten someone hurt. They weren't out here giving branding deals to rappers. So when Steve Rifkin, the head of Loud Records, got a call, it wasn't about copyright, it was way deeper. Steve's pops was deep in the industry and had real connections. Even on the other side, he gave the warning straight, tell them not to do it. This wasn't court talk, this was a message from people who don't play. You don't just slap a real mob family's name on your album cover in New York and expect it to slide. The Gambinos didn't want rappers flipping their legacy into rap clout or album sales. Raekwon, he wasn't feeling that message at first. He's admitted it. He was ready to stand 10 toes down. He said their mindset was, we Wu-Tang, we do what we—
Album, instead of only built for Cuban links, he wanted to call it
Wu Gambinos.
But then a phone call came in from the actual Gambinos.
My father called me. Somebody called him and said that they heard that, and they didn't want the name.
That's a fact. It sounds like some urban legend, right? But nope, it's real. The Wu-Tang Clan, always dancing with that underworld energy, got checked by the actual underworld, and they listened. Now, if you're not hip to how deep the Gambino family's roots go, it's time to break that down. Because crossing them, that's not something you walk away from clean. These weren't just tough talkers or guys playing mobster dress-up. The Gambinos were in everything grimy. Murder, extortion, racketeering, the works. They didn't just make headlines, they ran the streets in silence. The family name came from Carlo Gambino, a boss so cold and calculated he made movie villains look soft. He took over in 1957 and held it down till his death in '76. Under his rule, the Gambinos rose to insane power, becoming one of the most feared and untouchable crime families in all of America. And when they spoke, even the hardest rappers knew to listen. Back in those days, the mob was under serious heat. After those big-time Senate hearings on organized crime, the spotlight got blasted on New York's 5 biggest crime families, and their names got burned into history. Gambino, Genovese, Bonanno, Colombo, and Lucchese.
Gonna use that name like that and run with it, you know what I mean? So, you know, it was something funny to me because I'm like, I'm doing it anyway.
He wants. But this wasn't some label exec pressing him. This was real street power calling in. And in that world, being smart ain't weakness, it's survival. So after thinking it over and probably some intense talks, they dropped the idea. That's when the album got a new name, Only Built for Cuban Links, and it still became one of the hardest hip-hop albums ever dropped. They kept the whole mafioso flavor without poking a sleeping beast, and they didn't fully let go of the Wu Gambinos idea either. They slid a track with that name onto the album, where each member took on a mobster-style alias. Ray as Lex Diamonds, Ghostface as Tony Starks, RZA as Bobby Steels, and more. It was genius, saluting that underworld image while dodging any real-world drama that could have gone sideways fast. Later on, Ray spoke on it again. He said back then their attitude was, take the risk, F it, but something told them to chill. And Steve Rifkin made it crystal clear, Mafia told Raekwon not to title his album Wu Gambinos.
He was, we'll take the risk. But, you know, like I said, being young and kind of like a little immature.
Everyone knew those names meant danger. When Carlo Gambino passed away, it wasn't from a bullet or a car bomb, just a heart condition he'd battled for years. No foul play, no setup. Pretty wild, right? Especially since mob life usually ends with bodies, not hospital beds. But what came next? That's when things got real messy. After Carlo, his brother-in-law Paul Castellano stepped up in '76. And by that point, the Gambino crew was straight up massive. They were easily one of the most feared and powerful crime families in the whole country.
Carlo Gambino had the intelligence of a fox, the strength of a lion, and the nose of a hawk.
This guy was calling the shots, and those shots ended in murder.
But Castellano didn't get to enjoy the spotlight for long. In 1985, he got lit up in broad daylight, right in front of Sparks Steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan. That hit wasn't random, it was surgical, a power grab allegedly ordered by none other than John freaking Gotti. Gotti came in loud and proud, flipping the whole Mafia playbook. See, most bosses moved like ghosts, silent and unseen, but not Gotti. He craved the fame, rocking flashy suits, silk ties, diamond pinky rings. The media dubbed him the Dapper Don. And yeah, the dude had style. But don't let the drip fool you. Gotti was ruthless. If he even suspected you were snitching or disloyal, you were done. His temper was brutal and his reputation untouchable. The press started calling him the Teflon Don because no matter what the feds threw at him, nothing stuck. He beat 3 huge trials in 5 years.
Powerful and ruthless. He ruled with flash and conspicuous style, playing celebrity with the media and cat and mouse with the FBI. They called John Gotti the Teflon Don.
But you can only dance with fire for so long. His downfall came from inside. His own right-hand man, Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano, turned on him. That's right, the underboss flipped. Gravano dropped everything in court, laid out Castellano's murder, all the inner workings, all the dirty deals. That was it. The Teflon peeled off. Gotti was done, life sentence, no parole. Even locked up, Gotti didn't fully let go. The feds believed he handed off some power to his son, John A. Gotti. But in '99, the younger Gotti caught time too, pleading guilty to extortion. Later, he said he left the mob behind completely, but authorities weren't convinced. They thought the elder Gotti was still calling shots from his cell, using his brother Peter as his muscle. Peter Gotti eventually took over the family name after John Gotti passed in 2002. But just like the others, he couldn't dodge the heat. In 2004, Peter got slammed with federal charges, racketeering, money laundering, extortion, even plotting to take out Sammy the Bull. With Peter behind bars, it seemed like the Gotti grip on the Gambino legacy was fading. The next wave of leaders kept it hush, low-key. But don't get it twisted, the feds never stopped watching. Fast forward to 2008, boom! The Gambino name was all over the news again, a massive takedown of 62 alleged members in one federal sweep. Prosecutors said John Jackie D. D'Amico was acting boss at the time, but once he stepped aside, the reins passed to Domenico Italian Dom Cefalu, who quietly held things down until Frank Colli took the top seat. But even that reign didn't last. In 2019, Frank Colli got murdered outside his Staten Island home, and just like that, it was chaos again. No one knew who was in charge anymore. Sure, the Gambinos today aren't as loud as they were in Gotti's golden days. You won't see them walking around like kings in 3-piece suits anymore. But don't let that fool you. This crew still moves in the shadows. Want proof? In 2023, the feds dropped another hammer. 10 alleged Gambino soldiers got hit in a major bust. This time, they were trying to muscle into New York's garbage hauling and demolition game, but they weren't just pushing papers, they brought that mob energy with them. We're talking hammers, threats, and blood. One worker landed in the hospital after a brutal hammer beatdown, and another business owner, they allegedly warned him they'd slice him clean in half with a knife.
10 members of the Gambino crime family Arrested today. Yes. Remember, we're talking about an employee at a firm that refused to give up money for a tribute, getting hit with a hammer repeatedly until they were sent to the hospital. That a CEO of a carting company allegedly had a fire put on the front porch of their residence.
That's not just business. That's terror tactics straight out of crime flick. The charges were stacked. Racketeering, conspiracy, arson, witness retaliation, extortion, fraud, embezzlement, the works. If convicted, they're looking at decades, some even over 100 years. So yeah, when you zoom out and see how deep this rabbit hole goes, it makes one thing super clear. Wu-Tang dodged a major bullet by changing that album name. Now picture this. What if Wu-Tang had ignored that warning and kept the album title Wu Gambinos? That could have turned into a disaster. We're talking way more than just lawsuits. This could have led to a real street-level war, especially back in the 90s when the mob still had deep roots in New York's underbelly. Wu-Tang knew when to fall back when it came to the real-life Gambinos. But in the rap game, oh, that's a whole different story. In their world, Wu wasn't bowing to nobody. If you needed proof, just look at the tension that bubbled up between Wu-Tang and Biggie Smalls. Yeah, that Biggie, that whole situation proved Wu-Tang wasn't here to play games, not even with Brooklyn's crown king. But to really understand what went down, you gotta rewind to 1995. Hip-hop was in its golden era. Legends were dropping classics like it was nothing, but at the same time, the whole scene was on edge. One wrong move, one lyric, one album cover could set it off. Back then, everything mattered, everything. From the beat to the artwork, even down to the energy you carried. And if someone even looked like they were copying your style, that was basically throwing hands without throwing fists. So Raekwon drops only built for Cuban links, and tucked inside that masterpiece was a little spark that lit a fire across the city. There's this raw skit where Ghostface Killah goes off script, talking real slick about rappers biting styles. He didn't name names, but everyone in the culture knew exactly who he was aiming at. The streets were talking, the industry was buzzing. And all signs pointed to one man, the notorious B.I.G. now to Ghost and Ray. This wasn't just hate talk. They were close with Nas and respected his grind heavy. Nas's Illmatic album cover with young Nas in front of Queensbridge was iconic. A moment, sacred to the real heads. So when they saw Biggie's Ready to Die cover with that baby sitting front and center, they weren't seeing inspiration. They were seeing someone swagger jacking their boy's whole aesthetic and flipping it for clout. What Wu-Tang didn't know, though, was that behind all that smoke and tension, Biggie and Nas were actually cool. They had mutual respect, no static. But in 1995, rap was supercharged. Everybody's ego was through the roof. So perception, that's what ran the game. And from Wu's angle, Biggie had crossed the line. Hard.
We had a certain respect for Nas. Like I said, when Ghost said what he said, it wasn't nothing premeditated. All competitive, whether we like you or not. It's just competition. If it goes somewhere, then that's something else. But it was always about the sport.
Biggie, he caught wind of the heat fast. You already know word travels like wildfire in New York, especially when it's two giants in the game. Big could have fired back right then and there. In fact, he did. He hit the studio, put his feelings on wax, and recorded a full diss track. No holding back. He let it fly, bar for bar. But here's where Biggie showed he wasn't just a rapper. He had strategy. He sat with it, played it back, thought about what it could cause, and made the call. He told his manager, Jacob York, delete it. Let it go. That's what Jacob later revealed on the Don't Be Scared podcast from The Bossip. Biggie never released that diss. He needed to vent, and he did. But then he told Jacob to erase it completely. No leaks, no trace. And honestly, that move probably saved New York from exploding. Things could have gone sideways real quick if that track dropped. But that didn't mean Big was just laying down either. He wasn't gonna let himself get punked. He chose to keep it calm, but he stayed sharp, real sharp. Instead of clapping back directly, Biggie went slick with it, dropping subliminals sharp enough to cut. On Kick in the Door, he spit, "This goes out for those that choose to use disrespectful views on the king of NY." He didn't name names, but the message, crystal clear. Big was letting everybody know. He heard the noise, and he wasn't the one to play with. What made things even stickier? Biggie and Method Man had already linked. Meth was the only Wu-Tang member featured on Ready to Die, a big deal at the time. It was like a rare alliance between two powerful kingdoms. But after Ghostface dropped that fiery skit, the alliance started shaking. Some folks in the Wu camp weren't too happy Meth had worked with Biggie, and when it came to Wu-Tang, loyalty was everything. Now Meth and Big still had love for each other, but the air, thick with tension, that quiet kind of pressure where one spark could set it all off. And then it almost did. There was one night that could have changed everything. A night that had all the ingredients for disaster. Picture it, a packed nightclub on Manhattan's West Side, Music loud, egos louder, and way too much liquor in the mix. That's the kind of spot where beef brews fast and blows up faster. Enter Peter Pistol, a name that rang out heavy in the streets, certified, and with him, D-Rock, Biggie's right-hand soldier. These two weren't just boys, they were battle-tested, been through it all together. So when D-Rock pulled up on Pete that night, his face said more than words ever could. Serious, tense, locked in. Yo, he told him, Wu-Tang's trying to press big. We might have a situation.
He's my man. So D-Rock came to me, he was like, yo, what's up, Pistol? What up? Yo, what up, D? And he said, yo, so he was, like, yo, these guys trying to front on Biggie and shit like that, man. Like I might need you to, help us out, homie.
Pete didn't flinch. No panic, no drama, just action. He gathered the squad and got in position, not on no wild chaos vibe, but in that calculated way real ones move. This wasn't about making noise. It was about being ready in case it went down. Because one thing was for sure, if Wu-Tang made a move, it wasn't gonna be some light scuffle. Their crew wasn't just artists, they rolled deep with serious street muscle. So now the club is split down the middle. On one side, Biggie and his circle standing tall. On the other, Wu-Tang and their squad watching every move, the energy, frozen. The whole room held its breath. One wrong word, one twitch, and it would have turned that club into a straight-up war zone, but here's where everything flipped. Pete didn't let his pride take over. He wasn't trying to be the tough guy, he was thinking bigger. He spotted Raekwon across the club, and instead of waiting for chaos, he stepped up. A real boss move. And Raekwon, he heard him. He wasn't looking for blood either. Both of them knew if this popped off, it wouldn't just be fists flying, it'd be headlines, jail, or worse. So they talked, man to man. Respect met respect, and just like that, the fuse got pulled before the explosion. The situation got diffused, not because anyone got punked, but because two real ones understood the weight of it all. They didn't let the streets write their story that night. They chose peace over pointless beef. Pete's talked about that night over the years, and he's always kept it. He never claimed him or Biggie pressed Wu-Tang or that Wu backed down. That wasn't what it was. In fact, he's always shown major respect to Raekwon, Ghost, Meth, the whole Wu squad, because at the end of the day, they were all cut from the same cloth, street smart, solid, and aware of how fast things can flip. And that right there, that moment of clarity saved hip-hop from what could have been one of its darkest nights. If you rocked with this breakdown, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe for more real stories from the culture. Got more wild tales coming your way, so don't miss it. See you on the next one.